Hey everyone, it's Xant. So our third premium material select is upon us, and the list has been updated again. Now, much like the last time, few changes have actually been made, since the overall list of new parts hasn't been that outstanding, but corrections have been made to past entries. Thanks to everyone who commented on the last video that pointed out errors, or even just put their opinion on what parts should be on the list. We gave them a look and kinda made judgments based on all that. Now, just like every other one, this is a 100% subjective tier list. The rules that I use to make this list are as follows. 1. Traits that do not require a specific attribute are rated higher. 2. Raw stats are important. 3. Attributes are not considered in this list. 4. Focusing on melee or shot is important. Trying for both is not recommended. 5. I ignore word tags. 6. Welfare, pre-reg, and limited or Sokai parts are ignored. 7. Only premium material available parts are here. And 8. I hate physical bazookas, and they have no place here. Just like the last video, a thing to note, certain buffs do not stack with each other. Awakenings don't stack with other awakenings, alpha, beta, and gamma options won't stack with each other either. Now, alpha and beta would stack, but alpha and alpha don't. This list consists of the top 3 parts, in no specific order for each slot. If possible anyways. Some part slots don't have good options outside of 1 or 2, or anything that really competes for best. Doing it this way lets you pick which is best for your build. Now, please don't leave comments asking me to make your choice for you, but do feel free to join the Discord that's linked in the description, as there are a ton of helpful members there who theorycraft like the sweatiest esports players. Just like all the other lists, there will be parts for melee and shot builds for each slot. Also, in case you weren't aware, melee and shot have 2 core parts that they rely on to get stats from. Head and ranged weapon for shot, arms and melee weapon for melee. Pilots heavily supplement these stats, and the rest of the parts are the complement. Anyways, I'm done with the boring stuff, let's get on to the actual parts. So for the head slot, for melee builds, we have the Pale Rider. 385 melee attack, but it has the Hades Awakening, which boosts your melee attack by 1%. We have the X Divider Head, 384 melee, and it has the EX skill Offense Up Gamma, which is melee and shot squad boost by 1%. Beyond these, pick a Vulcan or Eagle Stellan of aesthetic choice, because there's really nothing else for this slot. Now, for the head slot for shot builds, we have the Dynamise, 3181 shot attack. The EX skill is Archer Stance. Need I say more? It's amazing. We have the Dual Head, 3181 shot attack. It has raw stats, and the trait is Beam Reload Speed Boost by 1%, in case you don't want the Dynamise skill. One of the newer parts, the V2, 2791 shot attack. The trait, if your technique, shooting power boost by 1%. Now on to the arms for melee builds. We have the Tall Geese Endless Waltz version, 3587 melee attack. It has an integrated shield, and the EX Dober, which isn't very useful for melee. It's a stat stick, pretty much. We have the Exia, 3177 melee attack, and it has the EX skill Double Saber Shear. B plus power, a B melee EX, it's great. And the last part, the Barbados arms, 2786 melee attack, lower than the others, but the trait. If you have an infighter, your melee power is boosted by 1%. That's arguably why this is the best in slot part. Now, there is an alternative, beginning 30 arms for outfighters. Just know it comes with a shield, and that does reduce an available slot, so it's up to you. Now, on to the arms for shot builds. We have the Astray Blue, 382 shot attack, but the EX is Defense Hack. It reduces all melee and shot defense by 1% for enemies, which is pretty convenient. I don't know if I'd put this on your main suit, but perhaps a supporting suit. Then we have the Wing Arms, 1181 shot attack, and the trait is reducing your enemy's melee power when your armor is less than 70%. So the trait's not all that useful because you do have to take a good chunk of damage. And the last arm part is the Tall Geese EW, 1606 shot attack. It does have an integrated shield, however, so you are, much like the beginning 30 arms, losing a slot, but it does have the EX Dober skill, A Pierce D Power. Pretty good. Now onto the chest slot for melee builds. You have the Shining, 796 melee attack. It has a super mode EX Awakening, melee attack percent boost, and all sorts of other stuff. It's great. You have the GP01 full burn and earn, 382 melee attack, comes with combat stance, which raises the melee attack of your squad by 1%. And lastly, the Gundam, 383 melee attack, and your melee power is boosted by 1% when you have a saber category melee weapon. And because saber category weapons are very common, it's a pretty easy trait to actually use. Now on to the chest slot for shot builds. You have the Beginning 30, 384 shot attack. The trait is an EX skill cooldown reduction when your armor is greater than 60%, which is very easy to reach, honestly. Then you have the Dynamis, 384 shot attack. The long shooter job boosts your power by 1%. Well, boosts your shooting power, but frankly that's your power in a nutshell, because as a shooter, you're just shooting things. Lots of pew pew. And lastly, the Legulus. It has the highest stats at 796 shot attack, and the EX skill has an A pierce, and it's a beam shot. Now onto the legs for melee builds. You have the Red Astray, 384 melee attack, comes with Bisect. It's pretty much the best part in the game for melee builds for legs. But as an alternative, there are the Wing Legs, 797 melee attack. The trait is useless for melee, so if for some reason you don't want Bisect and just want more stats, this is your ticket. Now onto the legs for Xant builds. We have the V2, 799 shot attack, the trait, bazooka projectile speed boost by 1%. Not that useful on its own, but it can be useful, and you'll see what I mean when we get down to the ranged weapons. You have the Dynamis legs, 384 shot attack. It comes with the GN missiles. These have A pierce, a super low initial cooldown, and you can use them pretty much right out of the gate in arena. It's not that useful now with the arena rebalance, but it can still be good for mixing up a fight. And the last legs are the Earth 3, 382 shot attack, and long shot attack boost by 1% when you're using a beam weapon, and beam weapons are very common. Now onto the back slot for melee builds. We have the Sengoku Astray with Particle Fajin. It's great, A+ Pierce, C power, very high damage physical EX skill. You have the Exia, Transam Raid. It has A power, % melee attack buff for your squad when you use it. Frankly, it's just an amazing skill for the back. And lastly, the Force Impulse. Excalibur has A power, it's a physical melee attack, and it gives you a heal and a beam resist, which isn't that useful for the team, but still, it's a cutscene attack. Now onto the back for shot builds. We have the Beginning 30, 384 shot attack. The IFS unit combo gives shot attack and beam resist for your squad as a % boost. It's amazing, and it's a cutscene. And the reason that I included this is it's not... I guess the best way to put this is, for people that have been relying on last shooting up to this point, you've been losing a lot of stats because you've been running a 3k shot weapon, but with this, you now have the option to use the Beginning 30 as your back for that cutscene damage, and you can actually put a higher damage weapon in your hand. But it is situational. You have the Dynamis back. It has an Awakening, which gets a % boost to your shot attack, which is great. For the people that got the Kyrios back, it's the same thing. The difference is, this doesn't require technique. This is just, you use it, and you have an Awakening with a super long duration that gives the same buffs. So that's why in my mind, as nice as the Kyrios back is, I still think the Dynamis back is more flexible, as you don't require an attribute to use it. And the last back on this list is the Legolas, 384 shot attack. The EX skill attached to it has A power. Now on to your melee weapon for melee builds. We have the Beam Saber for the Victory, 3,997 melee attack, and its trait, if your technique, strong melee crit rate %+. Not that great, honestly, with the crit rate, it's mostly for the stats. You have the Jabera Straight, 3,581 melee attack, comes with an EX skill, A Pierce D power, very strong. And lastly, the Mace, 3,586 melee attack with Iron Impact. A power melee EX skill, has a great group buff on it. Now onto the shot builds for the melee slot. The Beam Glaive, you have Hell Jumper, reduces the enemy beam resist by 1%. Beam Scythe, Deadly Circle, reduces the enemy beam resist by 1%. Sound familiar? Yeah, they're pretty much does the same thing, these first two. And lastly, the GN Sword. If you have Speed Attribute, it gives your initial EX skill charge boost by 1%. So, again, it's one of those attribute things, but there really wasn't anything else to put on the list. Now, for the range slot for melee builds, you have the X Divider, initial EX skill charge boost by 1% if you're Outfighter. Now onto ranged weapons for shot builds, you have the Gundam Beam Rifle, as always, 3,176 shot attack, comes with last shooting, which is an amazingly powerful EX skill. You have the Dynamese Rifle, 4,004 shot attack, beam reload speed boost by 1% is the trait, pretty good, mostly for the stats. And lastly, you may not have seen this coming, the Big Beam Bazooka, 3,590 shot attack, A Pierce D Power EX skill. Now, this is pretty neat. As I said earlier when I was talking about the V2 legs and how they give the beam projectile up, if you pair that with this Beam Bazooka, you make up one of the biggest downsides of the bazooka, which is the slower projectile speed. And because it's a beam bazooka instead of a physical bazooka, you don't fire it at the ground, you fire it at your enemy. And that is one of the main reasons why I really dislike physical bazookas, and why I always get really harsh on them. So I think that the two of these compared together really alleviate most of the issues that I have. So, anyways, food for thought. And for the last slot, shield, the wing shield, just like before, for melee and shot builds. It's the only one that has offensive stats in this pool, and it comes with a melee buff. So, there you go. And with that, we've updated this list with the fixes and some new content. Most of it is the same, but frankly, it is really difficult to topple the amazing parts that are in these slots. Like, there are some crazy good things in here. I really think that they need to be a little more daring with the traits, instead of the same old, But I'll leave that to the developers. They're doing their own jam, and we should let them do that. Anyways, peace out, guys. I'll see you in the January edition.